Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast is Critical Blast.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Okay, I saw you laughing there, John, at the beginning. We are part of the Madness Network, run by Pops Van Zant. He runs many, many podcasts. Welcome, Silverliners, to Wednesday Night Wham. I am your hostess, Barb Kaelberg. We have the venerable Rob Davis. Of course, he's always called the venerable. And we've got Martin. Yeah. Martin, who is training to become a co-host for Wednesday nights. And so he's kind of learning the ropes and taking some notes. And we have a guest tonight, good friend of mine, John Wells. He runs the QuadCon shows out of the Quad Cities in Iowa, Davenport, Moline, Bettendorf, and Rock Island. I almost forgot. And I'm from there. So, and he runs shows all around Iowa, Wisconsin, southern Minnesota, northern Illinois, and a little bit in Missouri, right?
And Nebraska.
Wow, all the way over to Nebraska. Cool.
And I think we're going to be branching out to South Dakota in 2000.
Oh, my word. Oh.
Holy cow. You're building your...
Wow.
You're building your empire there. Holy cow.
Little by little.
Little by little.
Inch by inch, anything's a cinch.
Exactly.
That's right. So anybody who wants to learn how to throw a show of your own, we're going to pick John's brains here a little bit tonight.
But then they're going to steal all his ideas.
There's no trust me. There's nothing to it but to do it.
Right.
Anybody can do this.
Yeah, pretty much. Yes.
Well, how did you get started?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and that's why you see people not doing it as much after they do them a few times.
Yeah,
I
actually did.
I've been doing shows since 1987, and as a vendor, and I've been doing this full time since 1989, all through college, and then my wife, she went to get her master's degree. We moved out to California, and so in California, you can do a show literally every single weekend, going from San Diego up to Seattle. And so, if you don't mind driving, 11 hours, you can make a living just hitting all the different shows on the West Coast every single weekend. And that's what we did. And, we had a pretty good living doing that, and then had kids, moved back here, started doing it again in the Midwest. I've set up at, all the big shows as far as C2E2, name the show around here in the Midwest. I've probably done it. And then I've also done Tokyo Comic Con. I've done shows in Italy. I've done shows in England. I've done shows, Utrecht, which is outside Amsterdam.
This is as a vendor you're talking about.
Correct. Yeah. And so I've had a lot of experience dealing with shows, and I can tell you how not to run a show and what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Whenever you're, as a vendor, my whole life, I try to look at everything through the lens of a vendor or an artist and say, okay, would this upset someone? Would this be, unprofessional? Would this be, something that would irritate someone? And sometimes as the promoter, you say yes, and you have to do it anyway. But, you apologize to the guests like Barb. You say, hey, Barb, I'm sorry you don't have any lights. The facility just didn't have any lights today, and so.
And has that happened?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've been to shows where there are dark spots in the room, and invariably they put me in one of those dark spots. So.
Yeah, no one wants to be in the back corner. I get that. I've done a show. It was in Long Beach, where it was literally me and 3 other vendors. There's like 200 vendors in this main hall, and then this little room, there's like us 5 or 6 vendors, and we're like, no one is going to see us. And guess what? Nobody saw us. And so you as a promoter, you never want to have that happen, at your events. And so I try to always leave enough space so that, people like Barb, if Rob comes over to, St. Charles or Columbia, give you a corner spot. So everybody sees you, you get some good exposure. It's tough though, balancing everyone's egos. And
there's a lot of egos. Yes. They will clash.
Yeah. I hope that I do not have an ego.
No, not at all.
I'll take any spot I'm just grateful to have. But you do have, people say, well, I don't like the spot I had this time. I want the spot he had.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I have that spot?
So this. Oh,
go ahead. Martin.
Oh, I was just going to bring up an interesting point that this could be potentially interesting, because if you get a big name to your event, maybe you could take the grocery store principle, where they stick the milk in the back. So in order to get to the good stuff, you got to go all the way through the store.
I know.
Go to the back.
Exactly that way.
And you say to the big guy, I know you want to be in the limelight, but if we stick you at the back, everyone's going to come find you anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. That's Barb. Did you do the Des Moines Comic Con recently?
I did not.
Yeah, that's exactly the way they did it. They put all the major celebrities in the back of the hall, and so as a result, I was set up as a vendor, and I got to see everybody rush by my table to go in the back of the hall.
Yeah, because he usually stays.
So did it work?
Did not work. Everybody was
Did
there
not
for
work.
the
So everyone still skipped you and just went for
Absolutely.
the stars.
Depends on the people that are in the back of the room.
Yeah,
So then I guess the other way to do it would be to pepper the stars between all the other guys.
I've seen it done that way too.
Yeah.
Either way,
The-
yeah.
The big thing that you have to worry about, I know that Eric that runs STL Comics down in St. Louis, I know that he posted a thing one time. He was at, I can't remember the name of the show now, but it was when I think Chris Evans was signing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was, insane amount of people there to get Chris Evans' autograph. And so he put up a picture on Facebook, and it was this line around his table. And it was like, they're not here to see me, and I've had 0 sales because the line for Chris Evans went all the way around the entire hall, and that's
Nobody
what happened.
could get through.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Nobody was there to spend any money except for Chris Evans.
Wow.
So that's
So
the way
when-
it goes sometimes.
So when you're first starting out, you have a chicken and an egg situation. Do you contact vendors first, or do you find a venue first? When you
For
first
me,
start.
Okay, for me personally, I knew all these vendors because I'm out on the road with them at these other shows. So, I know these guys from setting up next to them at C2E2, at Dragon Con, at New York Comic Con, wherever it is. And so for me, it was easy for me to, make contacts because I go out to eat with these guys, I go play pinball with them, whatever it is, and then you say, hey, I'm going to put on this little show. Would you guys do it? And they're all like, of course, we'll do it. We'll try it. And the expectations are so low that, they're like, oh yeah, we'll do it. They're just being nice, to help us out,
Hi, Pops. Pops is our overlord.
Overlord, yeah.
Yeah.
Madness
He runs-
Cosmic
He runs
Network.
he runs the Madness Network, so we are on his network.
Thank you
Right,
for letting
right.
us invade the airwaves.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to back up just a little bit, just in case anyone's jumping in late. We're talking about conventions and how to put them on, and John is a pro at putting these on, and he's been doing this for quite some time.
As he shakes his head.
As he shakes his head. So, as far as we understand, all right. So now you started as a vendor. So there's somebody who's selling comics, and so you've gone to a bunch of these shows, and you've been making a living doing that.
Yes.
And you've seen the ups and the downs. At what point in time did you decide that, okay, I'm going to transition from being the vendor to being the guy who puts this whole thing together?
That's a good question.
Oh, it's actually I won't name names. However, there was another show promoter who would only let me do his show if I did 2 of his shows back to back. And his show was literally 3 minutes from my house. And I said, dude, if you don't let me do your show, I just want to do the one that's by my house. I'm going to put on a show right across the street from you, and just to be a jerk. And he's like, yeah, right. So the next time he didn't let me in. So I call him up again. I said, hey, can I get into your show? And he was like, no, not unless you do Madison, Wisconsin the next day. I said, dude, I'm not going to go to Madison. I don't care about Madison. I want to do the show here.
No,
And
I'm just kidding.
no. And so just to be a jerk, I set up a show right across the street from him, and it was literally just a kind of a snub to him because he wasn't letting me in his shows, and so it was 18 tables, 18, and so we were all just like ordering pizza and just having a good time and like just throwing things at each other. It was just fun, And it was not meant to be an actual convention or anything. And so it turned into like the people that actually showed up, people actually made money. And one of the guys that set up there was from Rockford, Illinois. And he was like, hey, this is really a good event. Let's do this in Rockford. And I'm like, I don't know, man. This is, But at the end of the day, we had all made money. And so we're like, well, maybe we should do this somewhere else bigger, because it was so tiny. People were like crammed in there and stuff. And so we did another one locally in Davenport, and we sold the place out. And that was like, I think it was started off, it was like 45 tables, and then we grew to, ultimately like 75 tables in that place. And then, we started doing Rockford, Illinois. And then there's this guy in Burlington, Iowa. He heard about us, and he's like, hey, I've got this free place that we can do a show if you'll just come down and do it. I'm like, okay, we'll do it. And that show was phenomenal. Like, who's ever heard of Burlington, Iowa? And it turned out to be, oh, well, there you go. I had never heard of it. I was from California, so it's all these like little towns in Iowa that I have no clue where they are. And
I know Burlington, Ontario, but
and so it just kind of grew grassroots, like then I got another guy. He's like, hey, I've got this place in Dubuque where you could put on a show. And it just kind of grew totally like without.
It was organic.
So it was organic.
Yeah,
very much so. Yeah. It's really weird how it all worked out, because I think it was just at the right time, because everybody was getting fed up with the mega shows and having to spend $28 to park, $58 to walk in the door. You got a kid is $24. You're like, you spend $122 before you even walk in the door.
Right. And you got no money left to buy anything.
Right. Or you have to, you're just like, okay, I'm going to mortgage, I'm going to set aside $554 for my convention experience, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I didn't count on the soda being $8 and, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so we're definitely providing an alternate form of entertainment to that experience, because I'm a huge fan. I went to Star Wars Celebration last year when it was Anaheim. I go to these big events. I'm going to Fan Expo as a fan on Friday in Chicago. So I'm a big nerd. I've been going to shows since I was 11 years old. And so, but the thing that changed when I was 11, you would go to these shows and you would box dive for hours. And that's what was fun. And so people of a certain age don't remember that. And they don't realize that you can go to these small events, not have to pay an arm and a leg just to get in. And yeah, there's no celebrities, there's no giveaways, there's no panel discussions. It's just guys getting together and talking.
Geeks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mr. 21 wants to know, have you tried mini conventions at comic stores?
So I know a lot of guys who have shops. In fact, I think Tim's Corner in Rock Island is having one this weekend. And I know the Core in Cedar Falls, Waterloo area, they do their own show in the parking lot. So yeah, those events do well. We did one during COVID at 217 Comics in Springfield, Illinois. We took over their parking lot. We probably had 40 vendors in the parking lot, and luckily the weather was perfect. And
parking lot. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break it down then. So who do you bring to the shows? Do you end up having vendors and artists, or do you just have vendors, or do you have what are you doing for your shows?
Ratio.
So initially, I was just letting anybody in who wanted to come out and be a part of the show. I mean, I'm not going to discriminate. But it's definitely turned into again, organically, it's turned into a deal where a lot of people want to be a part of our shows, because the vendors and artists that come to our events, they make money. And that is because I, as a vendor, look through everything like, how can I make these costs cheaper? How can I, because I pay my mortgage with this. So I have to look at everything like, it's got to be cheaper on this end. Otherwise, I'm not going to make enough money to pay my mortgage. And so
keep the overhead low.
Yeah. And so I think Barb can attest to that, because you set up at our events. If you keep that cost low, then everybody's happy at the end of the weekend and or at the end of the day, because, you're like,
there's even myself, when as a guest, I have overhead. I have to restock the books I sell. I have to reprint the prints I sell. There's gas. There's
hotel.
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 Yeah, that's why I try to do a lot of Eastern Iowa shows for John, because I have family in the area and I can crash at their place. And that brings up another point. What type of hidden expenses might a newbie not expect when putting on a show?
Well, I think a lot of times they don't realize with our events, we are totally bare bones. And so you need to bring your table, you need to bring a chair, you need to bring a tablecloth, you need, like we provide nothing because most of the people that set up at our shows, they do this every weekend and they have all these things. So a newbie is going to be like, oh, I didn't think that I needed to, bring an extra 4-foot table, or I didn't think that I needed to have a credit card machine. I didn't think, there's things like that people that do it every weekend. They're just like, why don't you have that?
I bring all my tables just in case I need an extra one.
Absolutely.
But your expenses, what kind of hidden expenses do you have? That
insurance.
Might not, yes.
Insurance.
Yeah. I didn't realize how much insurance would be when I was doing the, first starting out. And when I first started out, I didn't have insurance. I was like, who cares, But once we went to a couple of places, they were like, hey, you got to have a certificate of insurance that shows you have, $2 million liability, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you're like, holy moly, it's going to be $700 just for insurance, just to, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm doing more and more of these. Finally, I got a deal because I was doing so many shows with my insurance company, and they can package them all together for a year. But it's still like, it's $500 minimum per event, just for insurance. And people don't realize that. People don't realize how much it costs to advertise. Everybody all the time, well, I didn't hear about this event. Well, one, if you didn't hear about it, why are you here? How did you get here? Two, they want us to advertise on TV and radio. I run another event that's a big festival that is, rockabilly, racing, cars, all that kind of stuff. And for that event, we do advertise on those things, and a minimum ad for radio is like $3,000. And
oh my God!
Oh yeah, it's super expensive.
Wow.
And so TV, if you go to TV on cable, they are also going to be a minimum of like $2,000, but they will they advertise at 3 a.m. for this channel specifically. It was like so it's very frustrating.
Wow.
Advertising is one of the main things that you don't realize how expensive it is until you start doing it. Same way with billboards. Billboard advertising is super expensive. Those electronic billboards and stuff. That's why these big shows like C2E2, New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, they have their huge vendor booth prices built in to have a slice of that goes to advertising.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't get that, and that's fine. I don't expect people to understand all that, but that is part of it.
So now there's also the venue cost as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the obvious one. Yeah.
And
Well,
then
you have two types of venues that we've been doing. One where you rent a convention hall or special place, and we've been doing a lot of mall shows. Tell us the difference.
So the mall shows were born out of necessity because, again, I do these events to pay my mortgage. I've always been doing comic book and toy shows, for forever. So when COVID hit, I was scrambling just to sell. I was trying to make $100 a day on Facebook, just selling stuff, whatever I could find in my closets, in my attic, in my garage, whatever. I was putting it out there. And so it finally, it was like, you know what? If the mall is open, why can't we set up in the mall and sell to these people? I didn't get it. And so, we took a lot of slings and arrows from people saying, how dare you put on a comic show? And I totally get it. I understand, because I've got a daughter who's got major heart problems, so I don't want her to get COVID and die and what, but I also got to factor in, okay, if I can put on a show in a mall, which they used to do in the 90s, what is it going to hurt? It's the same thing as if I go to the mall and buy a pair of shoes or whatever. So we got a lot of people mad at us, but we just went ahead and went forward because there were so many people who were so ready to do anything, vendors, artists, and the spectators. They were just so rabid to go out and do a show, any kind of show. And so I'll never forget, in Davenport, that very first time we did the mall show in Davenport, Barnes & Noble opened up an hour early or half an hour early. And so when they opened those doors, it was like The Walking Dead, man. All these zombies coming at us in slow motion. Yeah, dude, it was wild. And I got a little freaked out. I turned to my wife. I was like, "Oh my gosh, look at all the people! Like, where are all these people coming from?" Because they're, Barb, you're down by JCPenney at that. So I'm in the food court, which is right by Barnes & Noble, and they just kept on coming and kept on coming. They had to have had like 300 people in that Barnes & Noble just waiting for them to open the doors.
Yeah, it was a good show.
Yeah, it was really good, and it was because of the pent up demand that people had. Like, oh, I gotta, they had that COVID money in their pocket, man. I mean,
Yep.
That's the other thing that people don't realize right now. We're on a decline for the comic values because the COVID money helped spike all those values go way up. And, Ultimate Fallout 4, the variant sold for $56,000 at its peak, and now it's down to 27. So, I mean, that in a matter of like a year and a half. So, I mean, that tells you that there's a little bit of inflation going on in that aspect.
I've done several. Yeah. Yes, I've done several mall shows for you, and every mall is different in their regulations and rules that we have to follow. And and there's also, you have to pay if you're going to do a venue. Now, does it cost to do a mall show?
Yes,
you still have to pay.
Absolutely, on both ends, you have to pay a lot more. For an example, like when Barb, you came to our Peoria show at the Peoria Civic Center, and so that event is going to cost me, like probably 8 times, 10 times what a mall show would be, and that's why guys like me have to charge money to come in, because I have to recoup that money, because the vendors and the artists do not pay for the lights and the facility. They don't cover it, so you have to get gate money.
Didn't even think of that.
Yeah, to cover the cost of the venue. Now the malls, they want us there usually, and so they will give us a much better deal. For me, I usually try to balance the cost of the event. I want to get about 55 vendors and artists in the mall in order to cover the cost of the facility. And so that's usually the equation, is you get 50 to 60 vendors and artists, and that will cover the cost of the mall. And so you and I know Burlington is going to be our cheapest show, because Burlington, they don't command the same amount of people coming into the mall as, say, Peoria or Davenport.
Madison.
Yeah, Madison, yeah. Or even, the further north you go, the more they are proud of their real estate, it seems. Because I've tried to get into Green Bay. I've tried to get into other locations in Madison. It's just so expensive to rent those locations out. And so I try to keep our table costs around $125 for 2 days or whatever, very, very affordable, and artists will be half that. And man, it's just impossible to do that the further north you go. And so a lot of people don't understand, like, well, why aren't you doing a show here? Why aren't you doing? I've tried. It's just impossible because it's so expensive. And I don't want to, I want people to have a certain expectation when they come to our shows, and that includes vendors and artists. And I want them to know that it's affordable and that it's going to be in a cool location as far as, you know, there's going to be people coming in and that kind of thing. So, you know, so there's definite difference between malls when you especially when you have managers of malls who want us there. So
as opposed to the really nitpicky ones, like one of them up north here with the black tablecloths and we couldn't have the banners above a certain point. Remember that one? I almost spit it out, but I didn't.
Well, I mean, we're back because it was so successful.
Oh my God. I would come without banners at all if to do that show again.
Yeah,
it was the best show I've ever had. Ever.
Are you talking about Eau Claire?
Yeah.
Yeah, Eau Claire was amazing.
Claire was just, apparently they've never had a comic book show, and everybody was like, yes, or something, because everybody turned up. And everybody turned up.
I think that's part of the thing that a lot of people are like, go to Chicago, do this in Chicago, do this in Minneapolis, do this in. I'm like, I want to go to the underserved markets. And that's where I think the key is, because, you know, if you go to Chicago, people are going to expect Chris Evans. You know, they're going to expect a big deal, you know. Whereas if you go to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, or
you're like, take my money,
Minnesota, you know. Yeah, La Crosse, or, you know, wherever it is, they're just happy that you're in town, you know, doing something. And when it's free to get in, you know, like in a mall, all you're doing is wasting your time and your gas. So even if, you know, you're like, oh, that was lame. Well, how much did you pay to get in, buddy? You know, like,
so how bare bones? Okay, your show started off really bare bones.
Absolutely.
How bare bones is it now? Is it still bare bones?
Yes.
And is it kind of, or like you have like absolutely zero programming of any kind, or do you have zero? So it's basically, if an artist signs up or a vendor signs up, they drop some cash in your pocket, and Tommy,
how do you do?
Drop some cash in your pocket, and it's basically meet and greet for whoever wants to come in.
Right.
It's a Floramonte flyby.
Right. Okay.
Ron, this is Thomas Floramonte. He's a part owner of Kablam Printing. He prints all of our books. He's
wow. Hey, how's it going, man?
He is also an inker extraordinaire. He inks probably more than he sleeps.
Yep. I've been around for a little while.
There's ink running in his veins.
Oh, sorry, I'm so late. I was getting out of the office too late. Sorry about that.
So, Thomas, did you take lessons from Barb?
No, but she started a few years before I did actually getting in. I was early 90s, but she was like late 80s getting in. So she was she was cranking them out, slapping the ink before I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
But, yeah.
But now he prints them, so everybody comes to
I
him,
do everything
now. Print my book.
Yep.
That's a good thing.
So we're talking
by him for years now, decades.
Yes. So Tommy, we're talking about what all's involved in putting on a comic book show, and John is just a font of wisdom.
Yeah. I when I saw the title, I was like, putting on a show like a stream, and then I was talking to Roland, and he said, no, an actual con. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I want to know more about this. Yeah. So I was confused.
So I was stunned to find out that I would have to bring my own table. Just now, but that's bare bones.
Yes.
I mean,
and your own tablecloth
makes perfect sense.
But you can bring everybody else's product.
Now, it should be noted that for $20, I will provide your table.
There you go.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, and that's, you know, and then if people see that in the contract, they'll be like, oh, well, I'll just bring my own table and save the $20 because capitalism, you know.
Yeah. Besides, it's only like $30-some to buy a 6-foot table on Amazon, and then you have it for every single show, so it pays for itself.
Well, I mean, if you're flying there, you just leave it if it's that cheap, that kind of thing. Well, how much for the chairs?
How much for the chair?
Yeah, how much for the chair? Do I have to pay for the chair?
I do not provide chairs at all.
Oh,
Period.
I got to bring a table and a chair. Oh
Yeah.
no!
Yeah.
All right. Well, that just
I have
adds
some
up.
chairs I could bring. Hell yeah.
Okay. All
Those
right.
foldable chairs.
And a cushion to put on it. I mean, yeah.
So your group of conventions is called the QuadCon.
Correct.
Is that how you brand? That's how you brand all of them.
Yes.
All right. So it's called the QuadCon, and how many states and cities are you circulating in right now?
So right now we're in Missouri, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Omaha, Nebraska, and how many is it? Is that 5 states? I don't know. And then I've got a meeting in South Dakota in about 2 weeks, and then I was just offered a place in Indiana. So now it was a mall in Kokomo, Indiana, of all places, sent me an email out of the blue saying, "Hey, we understand that you bring in these events, and we would love to have you come to Kokomo, Indiana." I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go look in Kokomo, Indiana. I don't know. Yeah.
And that's cool. And we had also touched on the fact that there are hidden expenses that people would not expect if they want to put on their own shows. One is
All
it
the insurance? I'm sure.
Is it umbrella insurance? So that if somebody stubs a toe and at the show on a prop and decides that they want to sue John, you've got umbrella insurance.
Yeah, you definitely have to have every event insured because of that very reason. We also do this big festival, and we've had issues with people getting run over by golf carts and that kind of thing. And yeah, so when you start doing those things, broken ribs from falling over because they're drunk, and then we're somehow responsible. And so I've seen things like that, and so it's like, oh yes, when you're at a mall, you have to have insurance. When you're at these special event locations, all it takes is somebody to trip and fall and they bust their teeth or whatever, and then they're going to come and sue us for whatever reason.
What about fire marshal codes? Does somebody come around and check that too?
Absolutely.
The amount of people.
Yeah. So in Des Moines, have you done the Des Moines show, Barb?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm going to one of these days.
It's a good show. You do well. So the mall manager there is real tight with the fire marshal there, and
that's good.
Yeah, but she's very.
Oh, no, I guess not. It doesn't sound like it.
She's very particular about the things that she wants to have happen, and so I had a vendor set up too close to the escalator at the mall there.
Oh.
And the guy was already set up. He had his grid walls already lined with product.
Oh, man.
Like the whole thing. And it was a 10 by 20. And she's like, "Hey,
you got to move.
He's gonna have to move." And I said, how far? 6 inches.
You go, how much is this going to cost me to not have to move? Is it?
Well, the entire mall could get shut down, I guess, if the fire marshal came in or whatever. And so I rounded up a bunch of guys.
Just pushed really hard.
We did. We lifted and pushed like half an inch at a time. And it took us like 3.5 minutes to move this
and
thing.
All the comics start falling off the walls.
Well, see, we took everything off that could,
okay.
But all the grid walls were zip tied together and everything. So we all just 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Like that. And once she got to a point, she's like, "That's fine." And we all just like looked at each other and like, okay. But
threw stuff at her as she was walking away, I'm sure.
It's her. Listen, I always tell these guys, it's her house, and we're just guests in that house.
Yep.
And so when you come into my house, my wife is very proud of her 7-year-old carpet. And so we have to take our shoes off when we come into my house. Still, even though the carpet's 7 years old, we still got to take our shoes off because she doesn't want to get all trampled.
Kim is the boss.
Yes. And so...
What about weapons and things like that? With how do you handle all that kind of stuff? Because some shows that you can and some you can't, and then
absolutely each mall is different that we do. So
yeah, I did think about that in the mall. Somebody walking around with a fake gun, kind of thing. It's like,
airsoft is completely off limits at all shows now.
Even with the orange tips and all that kind of stuff.
Airsoft.
Oh, you don't want to shoot somebody with that. That would still hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a guy just at Peoria, and he had what looked like a real gun. And I said, dude, a cop comes in here and if you wave that thing around, you're gonna get shot.
Yeah.
Like you just can't. We live in a different world than we did even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We've got a show here that they do in the mall, and we see people walking around in their military kind of, outfits and stuff. And sometimes you look at them, you're like, is that a real gun or?
And this is a sad fact of today is that when Dick and I do these mall shows, once we get set up, we scope out our surroundings and figure out where we're going to run.
Yeah.
If somebody starts shooting. And
that's new realities.
Yeah. Well, it's even smart to do that just so you can get out if there's a fire or anything else. So yeah. So do you have people come in cosplay to the shows?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
he has a parade.
So we do have what we call a cosplay showcase because it's hard to get cosplay judges to come to every single show that we do. Because one, you don't want judges that just are willy-nilly kind of.
You want them to be a little, really judging rather than just picking
fun.
Their buddy or whatever. Yeah.
Right, and that's the thing. So, and to that point, I always try to have at least 4 judges, and I want 2 of them to not know the other 4. You know what I mean? So that way. If there's any because anytime
no
money,
collusion.
Yeah, exactly. Anytime money is involved, there's always people that get really upset for whatever reason, and so we try our best to keep it as fair as possible. And so an example is like this last Peoria show. It was a $500 cash award.
Big money at your shows.
And so at certain shows, yeah. And so we had 4 judges, and one of the people came up to the head of the cosplay, and they were like, well, you didn't even judge, the way my, 3D printing was molded and blah, blah. And he was like, well, yeah, we did. And I'm sorry that you didn't win, but these other 2 ladies that they were incredible seamstresses, so they should have won, but this person was very adamant about their 3D printing skills. And so it's, again, you got money on the line, you have to be ready for people to get upset. And so when it comes to social media, then I, as the show promoter, I have to go on social media and make sure that they're not running down the show because all of a sudden they're like, they don't know what they're doing. They're blah blah. I'm like, oh my gosh, because everybody has a voice now that even though it's a voice of one, all of a sudden people like to pile on, and it's just the world we live in, I guess. So my job is to try to keep all that kind of stuff as low volume as possible, so it doesn't pick up any kind of steam or pick up any traction. And that's and Barb can tell you that one of the things that I tell people, like, if you're going to be a vendor and an artist at our shows, don't bitch about our shows because you'll be gone.
You're not going to be invited back the next time.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's entirely the proper thing to do.
Yep. Well, but also expectations.
Don't go back.
But you also expectations need to be set too, right? Like you said at the beginning, like the expectations were like 0, right? So if the expectation is like, we're going to give you a Rolls Royce, and then you show up and you get peanuts.
I mean, 69 Volkswagen, yeah.
But so long as expectations are managed, I think you're okay.
You also have all right. I'm going to try to keep this as vague as possible. We had a show that I was at. And one of the vendors had material that was very inappropriate for a mall show. which is more or less family friendly.
Yeah.
And we had customers were complaining. And John's like, what should I do? He came over to Dick and I. He's like, what should I do? Should I just kick her out? Like, I'll tell you.
Was it artwork or that kind of thing? Okay.
Books. But that wasn't the only thing she was selling. And I said, well, you know what? I would tell her.
Like just adult stuff, material stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell her to put that stuff under the table and give her half her money back. Well, then she ended up getting pissed off and left anyway. But it's you run the risk of pissing somebody off, whether they're their customer, the vendor, an artist, or the show host, with your attitude or things that you may do. And I don't know how you juggle all the personalities that you juggle.
Well, I try to, like you said, being very transparent. I try to, in setting expectations, Martin, I think that's key. When you tell people in advance what you expect, and if they go out of line, then you're like, you're not going to be a part of the show anymore. And again, capitalism. If I'm taking away a part of their income or their side hustle or whatever you want to call it, they're going to play ball because I'm providing them an opportunity to, get some money in the door. And, and I welcome anybody to go ahead and try to put on their own show. It's a pain in the butt. And, and then you can not invite me and I'll be good with that,
Well, look, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but do you have like when like a list of rules? Maybe y'all talked about this already. When you go to some shows where you can display this, that, and the other. But one of my pet peeves is the poster pirate walls of people selling stuff that they don't own. Oh, that they selling stuff that they don't have any right to be printing and selling. What's if you don't want to talk about it, because I know some.
I'll be glad
you end up running off people that are giving you space money.
So you're saying anything unlicensed, or are you saying posters specifically?
Well, I guess it would be anything, but I'm more talking about when you walk in and you see that big 12-foot wall of 8 foot by 12 foot of posters that of Marvel DC characters that that the person's never drawn professionally in their life, and and they I like to call them poster pirates. So I've said this many times. So if anybody wants to get mad at me, they can be mad.
I guess
selling things that you don't have the right to sell. I don't mean the right. You can sell whatever you have, but the copyright to sell is what I guess.
Right, but so the way I understand it is that if Barb is selling a print of Firestar or Spider-Man at her table, and it's not an original, but she's duplicating this over and over and over again, Marvel owns the rights to Spider-Man. And so when you're starting to produce this in large numbers, all of a sudden you're now infringing on their intellectual copyright, and it's their product, and you're taking money out of the Marvel's coffers.
Which is why I do local shows only.
Right.
Because I sell very little quantities of those. Plus, I also worked for Marvel and DC at one time.
I know, I get that. I get that. But it's a vague area where
it's a very fine line.
A lot of people are like, how come you're selling this Big Trouble in Little China poster? That's you're ripping off Mondo. Mondo produced those, or Bottleneck Gallery produced those, and that is an original. I actually collect posters, so but I've seen this poster at shows as an 11 by 17, which they did not produce,
which they didn't make. Yeah, so somebody is
bootlegging this poster.
Yeah,
and so it's a fine line to know where to walk. My personal decision is, if an artist, like we'll just say Jeremy Provost, do you know Jeremy, Barb? He's got great art. He's a very talented dude. He does all sorts of art, but at the shows that we have him at, he does all these characters. So he's got great anime characters. He's got great Marvel characters, DC, whatever, and he does all of the art, but he obviously does not own the rights to Demon
Right.
Slayer.
And I think that's a huge difference, is that if you are doing the art, that's one thing. If you are stealing art from other artists and then selling it as I have a problem with that.
That's the line that should never be crossed.
Well, that's gone further than what you're reproducing somebody else's thing. But no, it's it's illegal for you to draw Spider-Man and sell posters of it.
Right. But I think the line is, and I see this at San Diego Comic-Con because
every shows. Yeah, I used to do it. I'm not gonna lie. I used to do it back in the day before I started with Kablam. Yeah, I used to do it all the time. I made a boatload of money, and then at some point, I'm like, I'm breaking the law here, but this is actually not the right thing to do, and so started pushing my own stuff.
Wasn't there? I do apologize because I'm not American, but wasn't there some sort of like unwritten rule that Marvel and DC would let you kind of get away with it because it kind of promoted their product at the same time anyway?
Yeah, you see a lot of bad stuff. I'm sure they don't mind if a well-known artist and stuff is doing it, or somebody that's worked for them before. I've done stuff for Marvel.
Yeah, and even a little guy like myself, if I'm only doing a handful, if I sell 2 or 3 at a show, that's I'm not infringing much.
I love that.
On their copyright, so they're not gonna. Yeah, I mean
that's my philosophy too. I don't sell enough to be a pain in their ass.
I am not making hundreds and thousands of copies of this. Most of the stuff that I print, the most I've ever printed is 25.
So this brings up a very interesting question. Then, what kind of legalities as a con person have you?
That's where I was gonna roll this into. So where do you fall?
And yes, I am responsible for the people that are in the show. So if Marvel and DC wanted to come after me, they could.
Yeah, that's where I was actually going with the whole thing. Everybody do what they want to do. I don't really care. I was you as the showrunner.
It's a risk. It's a risk. It's a risk.
The way I look at it is, I set up as a vendor at San Diego Comic-Con since 1994, and so I saw the whole influx of all the studios starting to show up at the shows. Basically beginning with Lucasfilm in 97, and then it just grew to this giant behemoth that is, what we have today. And the place was crawling with lawyers just wanting to, be able to prove their, I got somebody at the San Diego Comic-Con, and sending out their cease and desist and all that kind of stuff for, 3D printing or, whatever it is. Back then it would be resin casts of certain figures, that kind of thing. And now I hear none of that from people.
At a certain point, I think it becomes detrimental to both sides or all sides. To just it almost costs more money to go chase the people than it's worth.
Well, and there was also one of our commenters said something about what about fan art. The difference here's the thing. If it's a drawing that you've done, say you come to my table and you ask me to draw a character,
a commission,
then that's a different thing. What we're talking about is prints where you've drawn something or you've appropriated somebody else's drawing. That's the line I won't cross. I'm not taking somebody else's art and trying to pass it off as mine.
That's like Spider-Man. I
don't want it done to me, and I'm not doing it to anybody else. But if somebody can come up to my table and I'm doing sketches, I can draw anything I want within reason. Now, if you get right down to the brass tacks of it, it probably is illegal to do that. But it's one of those things where Marvel, DC, and all the publishers go, it's not that big a deal. It's not worth pursuing it. There are shows where they tell you can't do that, but there's no way they're going to stop it. It's going to continue to go on.
And now there's AI.
Yeah, and so
It's a whole other
there's no
bottle
way
of
to stop
cannabis.
that. But that's the difference we're talking about here. We're mostly talking about a drawing or something that you've done that you printed and had multiple copies of it. And if you've got a stack of three or four hundred of them on your table, you're pushing. Now you
or
really
those whole walls
down
where there's like
that's
20
too much.
drawings up there, and they're selling all those posters.
Yeah. But those big walls. I've seen it at every show.
And you kind of want to walk up to those guys and you go, "Have you ever drawn any sequential art in your life?" And they go, "No." You give them a piece of paper and say, "Can you draw anything right now?" And says, "No, I've got to. It's going to take me 2 months to draw that pinup." I'm like, I can do that pinup in like 15 minutes. What do you mean it's taking you 2 months to draw this picture? What are you doing? You're not a comic book artist. But that's getting off subject. I'm sorry.
We're going to get back on track here a little bit. I want to ask something fun.
All right.
What's been your most unusual venue?
Ooh, good one.
I would say,
because I did it at a horse barn once, which was
well.
I've been on an arena floor before.
February.
Yeah, I can tell you that we have had a show where they had a state fair 2 weeks prior, and the place was flies everywhere.
Yeah, I've done that before in Mississippi.
Yeah, it's horrible. And so I learned my lesson. I'm like, don't do that location because they're going to have, those giant flies that hurt you whenever they land on your face. Yeah.
They had pigs out here last week in the same area where they got it set up. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's funny.
But I think that for me personally, it's always a challenge when we do these locations. Just what I said earlier with the lighting and the way these places are configured. No one wants to have a pillar in front of their table. No one wants to be, around the corner or, at the end of the hallway or whatever.
Next to the bathroom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that's always the challenge, is trying to figure out how to place people so they're not going to be upset with their location. I think that I'll just name it, Omaha, the mall in Omaha, it always has a challenge because the mall in Omaha that we take over, it's got a few vacancies that we take over every single time. In one of the vacant rooms, it's a really big room, but the lights go off literally at random times throughout the entire show, and the entire room will go dark. And and so you have to go back to the breaker in the back of the room, and there's this sequence that you have to punch in on the lights in order to get the lights to come back on. So now, every vendor in that room now knows the sequence, so that if I can't get there in time, I'm just like, go back there and deal with this, because, it's going to take me 5 minutes where you could do it in 30 seconds, and so it's just little things like that when you're doing these shows that you have to kind of just adapt. And
is that the biggest disaster you've had?
Yeah. What's that?
Is that the biggest disaster you've had?
Oh, let's see. Biggest disaster. Another thing that happened was in that same mall. We come in on Sunday morning because Saturday was very successful. Everybody's happy. We come in on Sunday morning, and people's tables were gone. Not their product. Their tables were gone. Okay, keep in mind, these are the individual artists.
Their tables.
Okay, they brought their own. Well, what happened was they were having another event up in the food court, and the people upstairs didn't know that our event we were using our own tables. They all thought that those were tables just to be used for their event.
The malls,
and they literally just took everybody's product off their table, set it on the floor, and started using their tables upstairs at their event. And so you can imagine how upset the artists and vendors were. And so I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I've never had that before, ever. I've never had that happen in any show.
Well, that's pretty ballsy.
And so they're like, "Oh, we're sorry, we didn't know." And
you moved their stuff.
Yeah,
you moved other people's stuff off their tables.
It was bizarre. To this day, I'm like, wow,
that's really weird. That's very weird.
Well, it shows the mental faculties of the people that were in charge there, and come to find out, the tables that they were supposed to use were around a little bend in the food court, so they just didn't look very hard.
Yeah,
and there's like 24 tables piled up on top of each other, and my buddy Mick, he found the tables, and he's like, look, we just have to get these people to replace these tables so we can all get our tables back. And so that took up a good hour and a half just trying to get those tables back downstairs. It was a nightmare. So
wow.
Just little things like that. You're like, I didn't expect this, so just weird things.
So, getting back on track on the nitty gritty. How big is your team? Do you have employees?
No.
So it's all you.
Tim.
Okay, my wife says it's 3 people.
Okay.
Hi, Kim.
So you, your wife, and one of your kids.
Pretty much, yeah. It's I mean, I would say that I'm the one that's doing the promotion. I'm the one that's doing the tomorrow I've got a meeting in Racine, so I got to go see if that's going to be a good location for us. I'm not sure if you want to go to Racine, Barb, but
sure.
Yeah, exactly, sure. But we're trying. That's my job, is to find the different locations, to work out the details, to work out the money. Examples like Cedar Rapids Mall, Barb, it was a decent show, but we can't go back because the mall's not going to play ball with the money that we can give, so it's like, that's my job, is to kind of coordinate all that kind of stuff. At the show, we have people. We've got a person that's in charge of the cosplay. We've got a person that's in charge of the video game tournaments. We've got a person that's helping out with the sorting out of the tables.
And those are volunteers, right?
Kind of. I mean,
and then don't forget, he has his own massive booth of his own, his vendor booth. He sells comics. Once in a while, Dick and I will, if he's gone, we'll babysit his booth for him.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, and I'll try to buy you lunch or something.
Because he's not only running the show, but he's got a huge booth of his own.
Yeah, that's where the stress lies, is trying to manage my own vendor booth with making sure that all the vendors are happy. And so typically my most stressful time of the entire show is during setup, dealing with the vendors and the artists, making sure that they're happy, because they're quick to tell you if they're not happy. Yep. And that's understandable, because not everybody can be on the end cap by JCPenney's, like Barb is. That's a great spot, and I want her to do well, so I give her the most opportunity. Like, let's make sure Barb is here, so that way she'll be happy, and that way she'll want to come back. Because ultimately that's what you want. You want these artists to do well, so that way they make some money, and then they'll come back, because, once again, capitalism.
Well, it's also promotional in that she'll tell other people.
Well, not only that, but I have had fans come to the show specifically just to see me, and then they end up staying.
Right, and that's one of the things I wish artists would have that understanding, like yourself, Barb, because I think that they want to go to these really, really big shows, and I get that, but I think if they came to these smaller events, they would net the same amount of money. I would
rather be a big fish in a small pond as opposed to a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah, right. I'd rather go to.
I've always done better at small shows.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Mid to small shows is my big thing. Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
I've done enough big shows. I'm done with the big shows.
I still do one big show every year, and I usually until this last year I lost money. But the only reason I made money this time was I could stay with my daughter, who now lives in the city where this takes place. It was the hotel bill that was plus I really had the best sales I'd had in many, many years as well. So it was a dovetailing of those two things. But yeah, the smaller shows, definitely the overhead for the show itself and for vendors and artists is much lower. So it's much easier to make your money back plus. So
absolutely. I just wish other artists would understand that. But you know, I just keep on banging my head against the, you know.
My problem is I haven't known of very many in my area, and I haven't really researched it. But you know, if you're having, it sounds like you're having one right in my backyard here before long, and another one that's just down the street. So
I expect you to be at Columbia.
Well, it like I said,
I know you got it. I know you got
on that weekend, but I have another gig that I do. But yeah, if I'm available, I'm there.
I'll send you the lineup of shows.
Okay, yeah, so I can run them against my calendar of bus driving gigs.
Absolutely.
That's my wife says I need something to get out of the house with because I'm retired now. So getting out and transporting college students. It's actually a lot of fun. So I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can.
When he was in Davenport, by the way, John, he was with a group of, what was it, swim team?
No, it was the golfing team. Men's and women's golf team.
Yeah, and they went to Texas Roadhouse there.
Roadhouse it was, and he was live streaming the Wednesday night podcast from his phone while they were eating, and he went into the Texas Roadhouse. And he goes, "Everybody, I'm on a podcast," and they're like so impressed that this old guy knew how to do a podcast. They're like, "You're famous? What?"
Absolutely, yeah.
So, what kind of differentiates your shows from other shows? And are you highlighting like lesser known artists?
We're cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't a lot of competition.
Sure.
There's a couple of other circuits around here, but he's got a better reputation.
Right.
Because I do some of the other ones.
Right. And I try to be very, very affordable. That's the whole key. It's easy to find other shows that are bigger, better, whatever. But if you can come into an event and spend $5 and hang out for a couple of hours, it's going to cost you $14 to go to the movie, and that's going to be 2.5 hours. So we're charging $5 to come in, or at the mall it's free. So
and it's one-on-one with someone like Barb or myself. You're not going to have a big crowd of people around, and you're not going to have a line running in front of your table.
Oh, and trust me, they'll pick your brains for hours too.
Yeah, you can get one-on-one with the artist. Yeah,
and also I think just like at the big shows, I think the reason I think that these that we all go to these events is because we want the social interaction, because we're all interested in these same types of things. And we're hoping to make it a connection to talk about the latest episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi or whatever it is. And I have seen it firsthand, especially with these young teenage cosplayers.
Mm-hmm.
They come up to each other, "I love your cosplay. What is your character?" And they'll talk, and then I'll come back 10 or 15 minutes later. I saw the beginning of that conversation where they did not know each other, and they're still talking to each other. And to me, that's the most important thing about these shows is trying to make this, connect people with
connection.
Yeah. Because if, that's ultimately what we're there for. And if I can try to strike up a conversation with some dude about, I sell vinyl. And so, all of a sudden he's picking out, Esquivel, 1960. I'm like, dude, you like Esquivel? I love Esquivel. Did you, and all of a sudden you're talking to people about music, comics, latest books, whatever it is. It's making that connection with people that is so important. And I've seen it with customers, talking about anything under the sun. And the one thing I don't talk about is politics and religion at our shows, because there's no place for that. You can talk about that at Thanksgiving or Christmas with your relatives.
That's reality. We don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, we don't do that at Silverline either on any of our we don't.
I think that's smart.
Unless the comic is religious, then
yeah.
Well, I'm trying to get James
religious comic.
Yeah, I'm trying to get James O'Barr to be a guest at one of our shows, and the Crow has this whole like religious overtone, whatever. Like, oh man, all of a sudden you're like, So that's all. If you look into something too deep, you're always going to be able to read into whatever you want to read. And so, but I really, the thing that differentiates our show is the fact that it's so affordable, I think. And so that's what we strive for. And that's I think we've had good success with. And now that we have a following, people know what to expect, and they don't expect to see Chris Evans or, whoever to be at our show. They know that it's going to be bare bones, and they're okay with that. So it's kind of an education process. And just like with the latest show in Peoria, Barb, the fact that we had Daniel Logan, who was Boba Fett in episode 2, everyone assumed that we were going to have all these celebrities. We don't. Like, that's it. That's your celebrity, the one guy, And so we had a lot of people chattering online. When are you going to release the guest list? When are you going to? And I'm like, dude, that's the guest list.
The guest list is released.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we got Barb Kahlberg and Daniel Logan. Thanks for showing up. So
and some vendors. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and so again, once people understand and you educate them what you're giving them, what you're selling them, then people are okay with it. But it's once again, it goes back to what you said earlier, Mark. It's expectations. So we try to lower everyone's expectation before they come in.
And on that note, we're going to have to wrap this up because we've already gone over our hour. But it's we could talk about this for another 2 or 3 hours.
Did you bring up the Kickstarter?
I'm just getting ready to
do that.
And once we shut down, John, stick around.
Okay.
Everybody, I want to remind you that we currently have a Kickstarter going, Cat and Mouse and Kalis. And yes, Cat and Mouse number 4, which we have been working on forever. And I inked that book. So please go to silverline.com and follow the links. Go to my page and follow the links. Go to any of our pages, follow the links to the Kickstarter, and help support Silverline. You'll get a great story and great art. I guarantee it.
In the Kalis book, Rob and I got a cover that we did for the Kalis book.
Oh, nice.
And I'm sure there'll be some original art on this one as well.
Yes, I personally donated quite a bit of original art.
So now is Cat and Mouse? Would we consider that the Silverline flagship title?
It is. That's what we started Silverline with way back when. We decided we were going to resurrect the book that Roland had done very successfully in the 90s. It was a very popular book. We decided to kickstart it, and during the process of doing the first book, Dean Zachary said, Roland, you really should just start Silverline back up again.
Yep.
And he says, well, I'm not going to do it by myself. I mean, I did that twice before, and I lost money, and it was too much for me. It's just too much for one person. He goes, if we're going to do this, more people are going to have to kick in their talents to help out. And so he says, Barb, do you have any extra talents that I don't know about? I says, well, I'm also a corporate accountant. He goes, great, you're a CFO. And we just picked up people like that to pitch in and help. So we're several years in now, and it seems to be growing, and we have really amazing, exciting things coming up that I can't talk about.
No. And so if people want to know, Kalis is a fantastic adventure. It's the perfect dad book. So it's the ultimate dad adventure. Guy falls out of space. He's been gone and missing, and all of a sudden he shows up again, and he's bulletproof. And it has a excellent backstory, a slow burn, fantastic storytelling, fantastic art.
Yeah, Brent Larson's is the writer, and he's a very good writer.
Yeah,
so
this is the second volume too.
Big.
So there's a volume 1 of that book out too.
And Cat and Mouse deals with human trafficking in New Orleans. Our intrepid duo, which is Cat, Brett, and Mouse, who is Bobby. They tackle current issues in the wonderful new city of New Orleans, which I absolutely love myself. So please check out the books, check out the Kickstarter. We could definitely guarantee that you won't be disappointed.
And if you're out and about, go look for QuadCon from John Wells.
Yep.
He might be somewhere around you. So
Google it.
Give him a look-see.
That's right. And on that note, we are going to say, make mine Silverline.
Silverline.
I get my stuff.
Hi, I'm Bill Black. I created FemForce. But you know what? Today, make mine Silverline.